What's going on, guys? How are you?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Buongiorno, come ça
Bonjour,
va?
bonjour. Ça
It's
va bien, ça
bonjour.
va bien. Et tout, et tout?
Tu, super.
Super, super. What time is it over there in France?
It is, what time is it? 10:38 p.m.
Okay. You
So
look pretty energized.
yeah, it's about, I want to say 5 espressos today.
Wow.
And how many cups of
But
wine?
yeah, exactly. I actually waited for this to open up the first bottle.
Nice.
I
How are the
waited for
baguettes?
the special occasion. Baguettes are amazing. The croissants are amazing. We go to a local market every morning. It's all fresh produce, fresh everything, and you have to eat it all that day because if you don't eat it that day, it gets bad. It's crazy, crazy.
That means it's good quality.
That
Yeah.
means it's good quality, no pesticides. We did a whole day trip today, which was a lot of fun. Went to a new city, walked around, ate croissants, ate baguettes, drank coffee. Came back. I did get myself into the gym, so maybe that's why I'm energized. I went to the gym and it got a
Nice.
good dopamine kick out of me. So it was
Amazing.
good. Did some squats, did some leg extensions. Yeah,
All the
yeah.
testosterone is going up there. So great.
That's it. That's it. That's
Beautiful.
it. Yeah, so I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. So yeah, the idea today, I think, we're gonna kind of like go through where we stopped last week. We've been following a bunch of companies through the Sling system, and there were a few notifications that we should go through and kind of like walk the crowd of how we looking into companies, what are the things that we're looking for. And there was actually an interesting 8K, right, Paolo? I think you mentioned
Ye-
it earlier.
Yes. Not much activity, but there was an interesting 8K this week, so we can go over that
So
right now.
before you start, maybe explain what an 8K, why is it important to be on the top of the 8Ks?
Yeah. So of the different types of filings that companies are required to do when they're fully SEC reporting, the 8K is it's one of the most relevant, I think, besides the quarterlies and annuals that investors need to track. What an 8K basically is what's labeled as a current report. So the company updates investors on events that are material, and by material I mean that have the possibility to influence the company, for good or bad. Both things can happen, but it's material events that the company needs to inform its investors. So, for example, I'm thinking one type of situation that might be disclosed in an 8K is if a company did a merger or a sale of some asset or an acquisition of another type of asset, or, for
They
example,
can report things are actually closing. So if they have an intention of actually acquiring something or merging into a different company, do they have to report it by an 8K, or it's only when something has actually happened?
they can if they want to. It's funny that you mentioned it. Some companies use 8Ks as a way to pump the stock. So,
Mm.
they know that investors track 8Ks and the information about it. So they pump out 8Ks like every week or so, every 2 days, every other day, just
Well,
because
here, and not to cut you off, but this is the funny part about, what you mentioned before. It's, they're supposed to use it for disclosing material information, but who's the one that's actually saying this is material or not, right? Whose judgment
Mm.
is it really after? So is it material that I took a shit this morning? Maybe, I don't know. It depends who you ask, right? So yeah, it's a very, very fine line from what I've seen in this space, especially on the OTC, which leads to what you're talking about right now, Paulo, right? Using it to pump a stock.
Yeah, and I think the line kind of becomes clearer when you think of both sides of the equation. For example, you can choose to disclose whatever you may think is relevant. Like, for example, I woke up this morning and I feel great, so I should put it in an 8K. And nobody's gonna think twice about it. But when things go south is when the opposite happens. Like something material happens and the company doesn't disclose it. That's when the problems start. You can disclose whatever you want, and that's up to the company because, of course, filing costs money. So, I don't know how much it costs to file an 8K. I assume it's not as much as filing a 10K or a 10Q or a proxy or whatever.
It comes down, I think, to natural, put the money aside or whatever. It comes down to natural habitat, right? You're not going to go out. Most people won't go out there and disclose something that doesn't do good for them, right? They're not going to go and say, hey, I failed my test, or hey, I didn't do this. They're only going to do the good stuff, right? That's typically how humans work. You would hope, though, that a public company is not like that. You would hope that they are disclosing any material information, whether it's good or it's bad. I mean, I've found it such it's tough because nobody's enforcing it. They're only enforcing it when something happens, right? When millions of people lose millions of dollars, right? Because all of a sudden, if they need to look into it, right? Or somebody complains, or somebody files a lawsuit, or something like that. But on a day-to-day basis, who's looking at, what's his name's company that's filing 8K every day? Nobody's
I know it's
looking
fun.
at it. No, nobody's calling him up and say, "Hey, was this material, or why is it material? Is it material? Oh, because I thought so. Because hey, at the end of the day, if you have a backup for it, your attorney's going to say, yeah, sure, go for it."
Yeah, I think
So
it.
what I'm learning here is that it's very important for the investors to read through it and actually understand what it means.
Hundred
Just don't
percent,
don't don't just
hundred
read the
percent.
headlines and assume that because the headlines say, oh, an acquisition, ta ta ta, then the acquisition is actually happening. Sometimes they're just gonna report, oh, we just start talking to this company about this crazy merger, and it's very, very far
Correct.
from closing. So that's what I'm learning from what you guys are saying here.
Hundred
Yeah,
percent.
yeah, that's what usually happens. And for example, some companies they put out press releases, and then they put out an 8K saying that they put out a press release. So really, the 8K is not material at all. And even if you look at the press release, maybe the press
I
release is
think,
not
well,
material either.
I think you need. I think like legally though, if you do. I think there's like a time frame that they need to file the AK within. Like if it's 5 days after an event or 5 days after they mention something. I don't know the rules. I don't
We're
don't you know
gonna we're
don't
gonna include the
don't
rules in
quote
the
me
show
on
notes. We're gonna include the
any,
rules in the
yeah.
show codes. Yeah,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
so we
But
have
yeah,
more
but you're
specific.
right.
But
You're right. And then all of a sudden it's like that news release came out twice.
Yeah, and you're just losing time, but some investors are only tracking how many 8Ks are filed, and they think that's an indication of that the stock is performing well. And so the directors of those public companies, they know that they can pump the stock by just putting out 8K after 8K, and so they do that. And is it good or bad? It's gray, let's call it. It's gray. Is it bad? I'd rather have a company that discloses too much than a company that doesn't disclose anything. But it's up to you. Like, my job is to read through the 8Ks. So if at some point in time there are too many 8Ks, and I might think that it's too much, but I'd rather companies disclose as much as possible to investors. So that's really what the 8K is for.
Think about these days though too, right? Like we've seen with like all social media lately. Like not only AKs, right? Like SEC filings or OTC filings, news reports, releases, whatever it is. Companies are now using everything, their websites, all their social media, whether it's Instagram or LinkedIn or Twitter, they're doing all these like Twitter Spaces calls, which is like exclusive investor calls all of a sudden. And there's rules that a lot of these companies are supposed to be following, whether it's all the disclosure regulations, whatever it is, Reg F or whatever it is, Reg FC or Reg F something. I used to know all this stuff. I don't remember exactly which it is and it falls under or whatnot. We can come back to that, but they have so many outlets now, it's amazing. I mean, it's incredible what they're doing. And if you're not following these AKs and following all these news outlets and stuff like that, you're late to the game. And
I
really,
think I think what I'm learning here also is that, a very important thing to do as an investor is to follow those 8Ks, read them carefully, but then kind of like compare the information to what they file in their 10Qs and the 10Ks, right? Like, because the 10Ks and the 10Qs are audited by auditing firms. So we already assuming that they're much more accurate and relevant as far as information. And you can kind of like go through all the 8Ks and see how they materialized actually in the numbers, in the balance sheet. And that's when you can see if a company just doing the 8Ks for the purpose of getting the stock price higher, or they're actually doing some good things behind the scene. What do you guys think of my?
I mean, I would love that. That sounds like Pleasantville, right? Like a picture perfect situation, and you'd love to see how how it would work that way. Um, is it realistic? I don't know. I mean, today the guy thinks that he has an order coming in next week, so he wants to let everybody know that he has an order coming in next week. Does that order come in? I don't know.
But you will know
Yeah.
if the order came in or not in the K or the Q.
You would you would
Yeah,
you
you
would
think
hope
so?
you would
No,
you
I
would
mean, I
definitely.
mean, if it
I,
came, then you're gonna see the numbers
if
going up. If it didn't,
Yeah,
the numbers didn't
yeah.
going up, and then you know that specific CEO is writing press releases just for the purpose of writing press releases.
How about the biotech company that thinks they're going to get approval and that they're helping the world and they're doing this and they're doing that, only to figure out that, the trial ends up not working. So I don't know. Yeah,
So let me let me let
it's
me
a
give you an example of what
yeah.
I've personally gone through that I think 8Ks work. So, I've went through company filings and I look at everything. I look at revenues, I look at debt, I look at issuances of shares. And sometimes companies are not obliged to fully disclose who the investor is. For example, if they issue shares to somebody, they may not be required to disclose who they issued the shares to. So as a part of my due diligence, so I look at the date. So let's say they issued it a week ago, May 20. And then I go look at the filings. And if I look that there's an 8K that was filed May 20, and I see that it's relating to the same issuance, maybe in that filing, the company disclosed who they issued the shares to, not in the 10Q. So, putting those two together gives me a fuller picture of what's going on. So, and you can do that for pretty much everything because anything that's actually material, the company needs to disclose it. So if you look at the filings and see things that you think are material, if you go back in the history and look at the 8Ks, you're going to see that it's mentioned there. So
Mm.
I think that's why.
I love your due diligence process. I do. You must have learned from the best. I love it. I love it. I love it. How many times, how many times these companies they take out from the AK, or at least they try to take out the name of the investor, but then you go into the exhibit and you actually
Into the
click on the
exhibits.
note, and you click on the thing, and all of a sudden you see the name in there, or like they left one signature with the name of the guy in there, or
Yeah.
yeah, little by little you start putting it together. It's amazing what they do these days.
And that's more to our point that investors need to be aware of these kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they need to keep track of
100%.
it. They need to be on top of it because we play on a game where we think that the companies are following the rule and they're always looking for the best interest of their shareholders. When in reality, it's not always the case. Sometimes companies are always only looking for the best interest of the owner of the company, not the majority of the shareholders or even the stakeholders. So that's kind of where keeping track of everything that's going on, everything that's being filed, gives you the opportunity to look and actually find where companies are not playing nice. And you can decide what to do with that. Of course, if you're an investor and you want to get out, you can. Or if you're not an investor and you want to short, you can do it as well. But the important part is that whatever decision you want to take with that, at least you know what's going on. And that's why,
I love it. I think for the next episode, I think we should prepare a few examples of like some 8Ks you went through and how, what did you find out, and some that were very helpful in one direction and some that were actually very helpful in another direction. I think it can be very fun to kind of like go through them, read them, and together go through the same due diligence process that we're doing with our own stuff.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. I think it's a good idea. Yeah, the point of the whole thing that we're doing is to help educate people that might not be so let's say advanced in investing. So whatever kind of tidbit of information we can give, that's great. And if we can show them the process, I think, whatever company, whatever investment, even if it's a private investment, you're not talking, maybe you have a friend that wants to put up a small shop or a small restaurant or whatever, the process for due diligence is the same. And analysis is the same. It's just different situations. So I think whatever we can bring to the table and we can help you guys out there, I think it's of great value.
I like that.
I agree.
Awesome.
I agree.
So
I
I
agree.
think,
And we should create, what we should do at some point, maybe even put together like checklists, right? Because that's what we do, right? We do checklists for our due diligence and procedures and everything on that end. Be nice to give, somebody a template of a checklist of how to look or what to look and how to go about it or whatnot.
Yeah.
That could be a fun little here are the 12 steps, different
12
12
steps to
steps,
read a
not
10K.
not not
Sure,
the not
thank you.
the not the so- not the sobriety 12-step process, which is nothing against that at all. But this is the 12, the 12 steps to make sure that the guy is not, bullshitting, or CEO is not stealing your money and running and buying a Corvette and a boat and, you know, slamming,
I think
so
everything we're
on.
talking here can also be applied into the blockchain crypto space as well, because there's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of parallels. For being a crypto investor for many years, I can see everything we're doing here very relevant for the crypto space as well.
I
That
would
could
even
be a
argue that
fun,
it's even more
yeah,
relevant for crypto.
I agree.
yeah.
The only thing is the press releases. You can do a lot of the stuff are public, but yeah, but like over there is less regulations about what they have to report, how they have to report, since those are not securities. They're not obligated to the SEC the same way that public companies are.
Yeah, you're right. But I
Well,
mean,
we're gonna see an interesting future here, right? Because aren't they trying to make it more
Hmm.
regulated to so I don't know.
Exactly.
and
I mean, it
and
seems like
companies are starting to try to play around with it.
Oh man.
We've talked about it during this week. Maybe we can talk about it next
Where did
episode.
what did that company do today? I'd love to know if people made money shorting this thing. What was it again? SBET
SB.
traded SBET traded almost 2.2 million shares today, down 18%.
that's the company that was 500% up 2 days ago, no? 3 days
That's
ago?
that's that's the
Yeah.
company that a week ago did an offering at $3 at 294, and then 2 days ago did an offering at like $6 or $7 or something like that.
And they
And it
raised
ran to
494,
Four
95
hundred and
million.
25 million
425, yeah.
dollars.
Insane.
And they brought
Insane.
the co-founder of Ethereum onto the board or some shit like that.
All right, Paulo, let's put some notes to go through those stuff next week.
Yeah,
Guys, this
Yeah,
definitely.
we
was
could do
fun.
we could do this could be like part one. We could do a part two.
100%. I like that.
Part one,
Yeah,
part two.
But I know
definitely.
it's late for you alone, and I don't want to keep you, too late. It's already 11 p.m.
I
But
appreciate
guys,
that.
this was really, really fun. I'm excited for next week. Paulo, thank you. Hello, David. Always great.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
The information in this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Nothing shared here should be considered investing, legal, or financial advice. Please do your own research or consult with a professional before making any financial decisions.